Okay. Uh, for my prayer this morning, as you can guess, I'm going to quote the words of a hymn. I've used this, I think, when I started this session or the last session I led way back. But I think it's so apropos for our Bible class. It's called, the hymn is called Ancient Words. And we know that those ancient words refer to what's written in the Bible. And if you think about this, the Bible hasn't been updated for over 2,000 years. So they truly are ancient words, and they go back to Genesis. And I think for our group, this is just a beautiful way to saying what our purpose is and what we're doing. Holy words long preserved for our walk in this world. They respond with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope. Give us strength, help us cope. In this world, where'er we roam, ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words ever true, changing me, changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. And I hope that's what our lessons throughout our whole study do, that those words
Amen.
impart the beauty of God's words. And it is amazing, of all the books ever written. I know we have the works of Plato and Aristotle, et cetera, but none go back as far or teach as much or mean so much as our ancient words in the Bible. So hold them to your hearts and treasure them. Okay. Even if it's a new revised edition. Okay. We had a discussion about that the other night, didn't we, Marlene?
We did.
Okay. So we're going to finish up chapter 3. So chapters 1, 2, and 3 in First Samuel really been an introduction to a whole new part in the history of the Israelites. And there's just so much there. It's mind-boggling. The ancient words mean so much. I'm just got to backtrack slightly so we don't pick up out of the blue. But we know that Samuel has been sleeping. It's nighttime. Eli's sleeping. Everybody in the temple sleeping. Okay, and Samuel hears the Lord call him, Samuel, Samuel. Okay, and he of course thinks it's Eli. He has not yet really. He's been trained as what I said used last week kind of loosely is like an acolyte, how to do the different jobs around the temple. Not the temple, yeah, the tabernacle. Okay, it's so easy to confuse those words. The tabernacle, they don't have a temple yet, but he is helps to take care of the tabernacle, and but he hasn't really had that total communion with the Lord, but we know he will. Okay, so he of course assumes it's Eli, his mentor, the high priest, calling him, and so he runs to Eli's room and said, yeah, I'm here. What can I do? And Eli said, I didn't call you. Okay, and that happens a second time. And then Eli says to him, it's not me that's calling you, it's the Lord. And you need to answer the Lord the next time. So I'm going to open with what the Lord says to Samuel. And he says, behold, I will do something in Israel at which both ears of everyone who hears will tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile, and he did not restrain them. And therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever. Okay, so Samuel receives these words. Okay, so we move on to the last paragraph where we left off, and that is the judgment that was declared by the holy man of God. Remember, the holy man of God appeared to Eli and told him that his line would be destroyed forever. Okay, because he did not discipline his sons and let them run free. Not only run free, excuse me, and be sinners themselves, but kept them in the tabernacle there, accepting the offerings of the people, in fact, stealing from the offerings of the people, okay, making use of the women that they wanted who came to the tabernacle to worship. So it was not just personal sins that affected only them. It was sins that affected the people that came to the temple, which was really bad in the eyes of God, which we can understand. Being an example, being bad ourselves is one thing, but if our example of being bad calls in other people or hurts other people, that makes it far worse. Okay, so this is what they were facing. So this was the judgment. Okay, and because there was no repentance, God confirmed the word of judgment through Samuel. So God sent the man from God to tell Eli what was going to happen to his boys and what was going to happen to his line. Okay, and nothing was done to try to provoke some repentance from these boys. Okay, and God gave time. If they had repented, things might have been quite different. Okay, so God finally says, "Okay, they're not going to repent. So I'm going to go ahead with this plan." Okay, and we're going to destroy Eli's line, and we're going to kill those boys on the same day. Okay, so here's Samuel, who's we figured, not for sure, about 12 years old. Okay, and that can be those of us who have had teenagers. Okay, I now have grandchildren who are teenagers, and that's a tough time in life. Okay, they're trying to find themselves, and they want independence, but they want to be protected too. So here's Eli, about 12-year-old, laying in his bed, waiting for the time to get up. And I'm sure it rolled through his mind saying, how am I going to tell this to Eli? I love Eli like a father. This is going to be very difficult. Okay. So I'm sorry. I left out one point. One of the things that God had said to Samuel was that there were no sacrifices or offerings that would change a person who doesn't have repentance in their heart. Okay, and we are so lucky in the New Testament or the New Covenant, I should use that word instead, the New Covenant, because Jesus Christ made the offering for our sins. Okay, and as long as we do not reject Jesus, we are saved, and we know that. Okay, so the sacrifice of Jesus for our sin, which we hear spoken of in Hebrews 10:26, says, if we reject the work of Jesus for us, there no longer remains a sacrifice for our sins. Jesus Christ sacrificed himself for us. He atoned for our sin. Okay, this is continual. He doesn't do it once and we sin and he says, okay, forget about her. All right, no more. All right, no matter how many times we sin, Jesus Christ still offers himself and his sacrifice in atonement for that sin. Okay, it goes on eternally. Okay, we are the only ones who can stop it, and that's by rejecting Jesus. God accepted Jesus Christ's sacrifice. If we delay or deny that, then there is no way to reach him. Okay, so it's a sacrifice of Jesus Christ, which we have, and we just need to acknowledge him and thank him for that sacrifice. Okay, let's read verses 15 through 18. Jean, can we start out with you? You
Sure.
got the book open.
Yes.
15
Yes,
through
I do.
18.
Okay. Samuel lay down until morning and then opened the doors of the house of the Lord. He was afraid to tell Eli the vision. But Eli called him and said, Samuel, my son. Samuel answered, Here I am. What was it he said to you? Eli asked. Do not hide it from me. May God deal with you, be it ever so severely, if you hide from me anything he told you. So Samuel told him everything, hiding nothing from him. Then Eli said, He is the Lord. Let him do what is good in his eyes.
Okay, so Eli didn't argue. He knew in his heart and understood he messed up. Okay, he didn't bring his children up the way they should have been brought up, and he didn't argue. He didn't say, he didn't get angry with God. He accepted it. Which he accepted the judgment of God, which had to be pretty hard. Okay. Okay. So after God, looking at these three chapters, after God had spoken to him, Samuel lay down. Okay. And he was probably restless and how am I going to say, what am I going to do? Okay. So, he had that ear tingling. Remember, they said that's a term that was used in those days. Something that really meant something was ear tingling. Okay, not tinnitus, but just it kind of went. It was a way of expressing your mind keeps spinning. Okay, from this message from God upset him, and he was wondering how he could ever tell Eli such a powerful word of judgment. And Samuel was afraid of Eli, but this is not a fear of something terrible happening to him, or Eli being mad and punishing him. It was really the fear that he didn't want to hurt Eli. He had a great deal of love and respect for Eli. Okay. Then the Bible tells us that when it was time to get up, Samuel opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and we presume this was one of Samuel's duties at the tabernacle. Okay. Now Eli gets up. Okay. And he says, Samuel, my son. This is very a beautiful acceptance and shows a relationship between Samuel and Eli. Okay. Eli was not a good boss or a good parent to his children, Hophni and Phinehas. Okay. When we talk about being a good boss, the word and a good parent, we're not talking about giving our kids things. Oh, that's a good mom. Look, she gave, the toys and the privileges and all that. It's not that kind of a good. It's the kind of good that brings a child up the way they should be brought up, with discipline, okay, loving discipline, with respect, how to relate to other people, okay? And I think we all know, hopefully it's our own children, but we know children who are very respectful and very loving and very kind with their parents and with one another. And that's such a good way to have your children. It's wonderful if you raise children who are ethically and morally correct and know how to love, okay? And that is far more necessary and useful and a good way to be than someone who's been lavished with presents and gifts. And I had a friend in high school whose parents were very wealthy, and they were gone all the time. Okay, and they had everything: gorgeous house, land. They took trips, but their parents were always gone, and they were raised by a nanny. She was a Black woman, sweetest gal you ever wanted to know, hefty gal, cooked incredibly well, and just was so loving. And my other girlfriend and I invited her. She lived in Rye, we lived in Mount Vernon, and we asked her several times to come and spend the night. And I will never ever forget the first time she stayed with me. And when the night was over and my mother cooked and sat there and talked with us and everything, she came to me and she started crying that night. And she said, Barbara, and we were not wealthy. I mean, we lived in an attic, okay? Lived my whole childhood in an attic apartment, all right? wore a uniform, which is a good thing because we didn't have money for many clothes. And my friends were in the same boat. We didn't know we had that little money or we were economically deprived, but we were happy. Okay. And Celeste said to me, I wish I had lived in a home like you do. She said, your parents are wonderful. And they sat down and talked with her and all that kind of, she said, I rarely see my parents. So it just goes to show you, it's the love and the respect that you foster in your children that make them happy, far happier than any kind of presents you could ever give them. Okay. So, and this apparently was the case with Eli. He let his kids do anything they want. Don't we hate going to a restaurant where the kids are running all over the place? I mean, that lack of discipline, you know. And I remember one parent looking at my father and saying, oh, isn't she cute? As this kid's, you know, pulling on my father. And my father turned to her and said, I really don't think so. I didn't come here to listen to her. I came here to eat, you know. So, but some of them just don't understand that. So I think this was the situation that they had. And because of the lack of discipline, these boys just did anything they want, including some very serious sins. Okay. So, but Samuel came into Eli's life kind of as a second chance. Okay. And Eli did a much better job of raising Samuel than he did his sons by birth. Okay. Now, Eli says to Samuel, what did the Lord say to you? Okay. He probably had a good idea what the subject matter was. Okay. But so he took the initiative, not waiting for Samuel to tell him, but for him saying to Samuel, I want to know what the Lord said to her. Okay. And he knew it was hard for Samuel to share this with him. But Eli made it clear he had the responsibility to bring this message from God, even if it was bad news. Okay. Eli was admirable because he was willing to be taught from an unexpected source. So he's listening. He's probably in his 80s. I would guess he was up there in years. And he'd been in
Frozen.
Frozen.
Frozen, yeah. While she's getting back on, let me ask you, please, if when you're on the call to put yourself on mute, because even though you're not doing much, we can all hear the commotion that's going on in the back or the words that are being said. So please go to mute. Thank you.
Hey, Donna.
Yes.
I just a quick comment. It doesn't say anything about the mother, about Hophni and Phinehas' mother, Mrs. Eli. But ultimately, since Eli was the head of the family, all the blame their upbringing on
Again, please go to mute. Go to mute, all of you, if you will, please.
And it was on mute.
Yeah, there are some that are not. Okay, back to Laura. Barbara, are you here? No.
Okay. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. It says nothing about Mrs. Eli, about the mother of Hophni and Phinehas. But ultimately the blame falls on Eli, who's the head of the family. And I find that interesting that the mom is not even mentioned whatsoever, but it all falls in Eli's lap. And he actually did admonish his sons to stop, but they just didn't listen. That was in a previous under Eli's wicked sons in chapter 2.
Super, thank you. Kim?
BJ and Marilyn and Betty are not on mute.
Oh, I thought it was.
I'm on mute. I'm on mute.
Betty's on mute now. BJ not yet. Marilyn, I don't know where she went. Oh, there she
I'm
is.
here.
You're not on mute, Marilyn.
Well, I put it on mute.
And I had it on mute.
No, it's not.
Oh,
Should be at the bottom of your,
No, I got it at the top, right above your head.
there you go.
Okay.
Marilyn, you're still not on mute.
I'm
Okay.
working on it.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know what happened to Barbara. She must be having some problems. Marlene, you're on mute.
No,
There
I'm
you
off. Okay. Adding to what Laura said about Eli's sons and their mother. Eli would, yes, the mother would have had control of everything that was in the house and should have been teaching them right and from wrong. But anything from the altar, and it tells you in the early chapters that they literally took the meat from the altar and ate it before it was cooked and all of that. That is strictly Eli's problem or fault, and it's all wrong is a sin against God. But stealing the meat from the altar, and they did other things, I'm just using that as an example, was really a sin against God because that was an offering to God that they were stealing. So it wasn't a bad action like telling your sister or your brother, I don't like you, or I'm going to tell mother or something. And that would have been strictly Eli's fault, I'm going to say, for not enforcing the rules that were given back in Leviticus and Exodus about what was to be done with the offerings. And so not only were the sons misbehaving in earthly ways, they were misbehaving in godly ways, if that makes any sense.
Marlene?
Yes.
I might add too that, having sex with women who were serving at the temple, that was a pretty big deal against God also. Just saying.
Yes. Yes. They were definitely not obeying God. And when I say they, I mean the Jews, the Jewish population, obeying God in a lot of ways. Okay. One thing I do want to point out, and I may be, Barbara isn't back yet. I may be saying something that she's going to touch on in a few minutes, if she ever gets back on, or maybe goes next week, because I see Donna's, I guess, talking to her. Eli's line, and remember from back in, again, Exodus and Leviticus, Eli's line, the priests had to be descended from the line of Aaron, direct descendants. We've talked about that over and over and over. Donna is.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I have an update on Barbara. Her internet went down, Spectrum went down, and her husband called Spectrum and they said that they'd have it up in about 5 minutes. She asked that we not go on with this particular lesson because she's got some points that she wants to make. So
Okay.
until she gets on, maybe we can talk about something else other than.
Okay, I'll stop
lesson.
right there then, because I wasn't sure if she was going to.
She's
talk
going to
about
try.
the line of
She's gonna
Eli.
try in about 5 minutes, but Marlene, I'm going to turn it over to you or to Laura, maybe to talk about something other than the lesson, or Jane or Kathy, anybody.
I
Laura, go
have,
ahead.
yeah.
Laura.
During my time with Kim Hauser yesterday, I told her about our Bible study and staying connected with our Rejoice family through worship on Sunday and in our own home virtually, and then also with Bible study. And I offered to have her join our group if it was possible for her. And I did send her, Donna, one of your email information on the member ID and the passcode so that she could join us whenever she is available to do so. I believe she told me, though, that she had something, an appointment or something that would keep her from joining today.
Fantastic. And Laura, now that you mention it, I don't know if you tried on Sunday to get into the adult Sunday school or not. That was our fault. Okay, we are set up with the same code that you had before, so that and David couldn't remember the PIN number was what it came down to, and I didn't have it either. So as of Sunday, you should be able to get onto the adult Sunday school without any problem.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. I wasn't, yeah, I have not been physically with my brother on his birthday since we were teenagers, and he just turned 69 on Monday. So it was a very special weekend to spend, and I completely, totally surprised him. My sister-in-law knew, my niece knew that I was coming, but Jim had no clue. So it was a wonderful visit. And we worshiped at his All Saints Anglican Church. They were Episcopalian for many, many years, but there was a split. Something was going on, kind of like, say, between Missouri Synod and ELCA, so it split. It was one of those deals. So now that their church is no longer Episcopalian, but rather an Anglican church. And so the liturgy was very similar to what we say in church on Sunday. And the hymns were, I think there were just a couple of things that I just kind of had to hum along with because I didn't know the tune. But for the most part, it was a very familiar service, very similar to what we have at ELCA Lutheran. And it was wonderful.
Just to give you an update, I got another call from Barbara. It's going to take a while, so more than likely she will not be able to join us this morning. Marilyn, I apologize. She's going to need to take some time at the beginning of next week to cover what she needs to cover. She has some things she wants to talk about in terms of Samuel, but she said there's no reason why we can't go on with it if we want to, or start talking about something else, or end early, whatever. Janet.
I just wanted to mention that we've had 2 dogs join our Bible study.
Well, I saw Peanut. Who's the other dog?
Kathy's dog.
Oh, you're on mute, Kathy. Kathy, you're on mute. That's the problem with muting.
My dog has grown accustomed. Are y'all there?
Yes.
Can y'all hear me?
We
Okay.
can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, I look better actually. So ever since I started this Bible study group, she's an old dog. She's 15, and she gets on her little bed right at my feet. And I think she has gotten so used to this every week. She hears the voices. She nestles down. She gets relaxed. She's always with me during Bible study.
Super.
But when I saw Peanut in Jane's arms, I said, well, okay, I'm going to put my dog up too. And so just for a little bit, but she didn't appreciate it. She wanted to go back to sleep. So
yeah, there you go.
She loves Bible study. She does. I do too.
I do too. Anybody want to talk about anything, or Marilyn, and you're on mute. You're on mute, Marilyn. I know. You know, okay. I don't think I can unmute you. I'll try.
I think she's working on it.
I think
Oh.
maybe not. Yeah.
Donna, Marilyn, if it's okay with you, I have a little blurb in my study Bible here about the transition team between judges and kings, and it just talks about this portion of the Bible, and it just kind of gives a brief synopsis of Samuel's going to go on and do blah blah, but it's real short.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let
that-
me add just one thing before you share that. This is how God works. In my Bible study that I do in person, just started today. And guess what our lessons are for this year? Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and then after Christmas will be Ephesians. So I'm getting Bible. So I will have my input from the 1st and 2nd Samuel as well. But one of the things she said in the lecture, which goes perfectly with what you were saying, is that Ruth is the bridge between Judges and 1st and 2nd Samuel. And so that's what our lesson will be on next week, is on the book of Ruth. But the last thing she told us, she said, we studied the written word so that we may know the living word.
Very good.
And it was a
Very
quote
good.
from somebody, but I don't know what it was. So I
Okay,
just wanted to
Laura.
say that. So go ahead.
Laura?
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you, Marilyn. I love that. Okay, so it says transition team between judges and kings. 3:19, the Lord was with Samuel as he grew up, and he let none of his words fall to the ground. By the time of the judges, most of God's promises to the Israelites have already been fulfilled, including the promise that they would possess their own land. Even so, something is clearly lacking. No one would begin to call this crazy quilt of tribal territories a unified nation. In fact, throughout the era of the judges, the Israelites have fought each other as often as they have fought their hostile neighbors. As this book opens, their perennial enemies, the Philistines, are exploiting the Israelites' disunity, pushing ever deeper into their territory. Israel's military weakness leads to one of the darkest days of the Old Testament history, a time when the Philistines capture the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Some wonder whether God has abandoned Israel. And then a little blurb, news to tingle the ears. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. This chapter goes on to relate how God directly steps in, as he did with Abraham and Moses, and calls out a new leader. See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears of it tingle, God announces in verse 11, chapter 3. While still a boy, Samuel hears God speak. He delivers God's message, even though it involves a rebuke for Eli, the man who has raised him from childhood. This gives an early indication that Samuel will grow into a genuine prophet, for false prophets usually deliver only good news. Ultimately, Samuel serves the entire nation as a transitional leader in the period between the judges and the kings. A priest by training, he also leads the nation's worship. When the need arises, he even functions as a military general, spearheading a victorious recapture of disputed territories. Finally, under God's direction, Samuel anoints Israel's first two kings. By performing these varied roles, Samuel leaves an important legacy. He manages to unite the tribes for the first time in a century, and under his leadership, Israel comes to the brink of nationhood. God has not forgotten the covenant after all. And it has a life question. Have you ever felt called by God for a certain task? And how have you responded? That's what I have. Something to think
Thank
about.
you. Very good.
Good question. Good question.
Mhm.
Anybody answer that? Marilyn?
Well, no, I was just wasn't going to answer that, but I was just going to tell you a little bit of background of what you can expect when we start chapter 4. And if y'all want to write it down now, so you'll have it, but because I was going to go over it to begin with, but I'm not going to lecture like Barbara, because I don't feel like I have the knowledge that Barbara and Marlene have, and some of the rest of you. But I talked to Jane, and every week we're going to go through who, what, when, where, why, and how can I apply. So if you want to write that down, just to refer to it as we're going through, and as we read it and you see an answer, write it down next to the who, what, when, where, why, and how can I apply. That'll be at the end. It's how can we apply what we learned today. Then I am going to, I probably will read the scripture to begin with in the first part of Samuel 4, but I'm also going to give some background on the Philistines. Have y'all done that before?
It's worth doing it again.
Yes, do it again.
Well,
do it again.
And Marlene, if you've got some info that you want to share, then be prepared to do that, because I think it's always interesting. We need to identify our enemies, and the Israelites failed to do that always. I mean, we know that they didn't go in with the Lord like they should have been, since they were His people. He was their people, but it seems, am I wrong, Marlene or Donna, any of you? Was the Philistines the hardest one for the Israelites to defeat?
I think you're right.
I think it'll be great.
Of the physical things, the biggest problem the Israelites had was their own inner sin. It's what we all had. The problem we all had.
Right.
But as far as a tribe, and I don't know if tribe, a country, a group of people. Yes, the Philistines were, at least they're the ones that are talked about the most. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, it seemed to me that they were
Marilyn, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Marilyn. I'd like to go back to Laura's question before.
Oh, okay. If I could say one quick thing.
Go ahead, Marlene.
Oh, okay.
Quickly.
It is very important to remember that, and I'm going to be very general here because Marilyn is going to cover a lot of this in her chapters. But remember, the ark is in Shiloh. The ark is not in Jerusalem. It's in Shiloh. And so Shiloh is the head of the worship area for Jerusalem when all this is taking place. And the ark is there. Okay. And Marilyn was telling you about the Philistines.
Yeah. Can we hold that until we get to those chapters? Marlene,
I'm just going to give you one quick thing. In your packet on page 4, and you don't have to go to it now and wait till Marilyn starts talking about it, but it's a map of what the Philistines do with the ark, and it will help make the visual easier for you. Okay?
Okay, let's go back to Laura. Laura, do you want to ask your question again, please? You're on mute.
There we go. Let me turn to that really quickly here. The question was, have you ever felt called by God for a certain task? And how have you responded?
Anyone?
Yes.
Have you ever,
Have you ever felt called by God for a certain task? And how have you responded? I can give you a case in point. Back in 2021, we were supposed to have a mission trip to Juarez, and we had 4 adults who had committed to the mission trip. 2 of them bowed out last minute due to work commitments. The other one, her husband was in the ICU with COVID. So instead of just saying, all right, well, we're not going to go, I felt like God was leading me to just go, be the mission trip, take the items we had accumulated for our brothers and sisters across the border and go and serve. And I did. And God blessed me with that 10-hour trip by myself there and 10 hours back with no problems whatsoever. And everything went so smoothly. We went across the border twice during those 5 days. And we served 140 refugees, including 70 children at this Anapra Pueblo. So it was one of those where God called and led me to answer and go and do, be the hands and feet of the Lord.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else? Kathy, you're on mute. You're on mute. Kathy is on mute.
How's that? Is that better? Okay, mine's not as wonderful. I mean, it was wonderful. As Laura said, it was just wonderful what she said, and it's great. And it's, you know, I had a friend for many, many years who was very needy for me. She turned out to be my best friend, but she called me all the time. She needed me for this. She needed me for that. She took me away from stuff. People would say, why do you put up with that? You know, this kind of thing. And I loved her. I grew to love her very much. She was the best friend I ever had. One of my best friends I ever had. And after she passed away, people would say, you were the best to her. You treated her so good, better than anybody treated her, and she loved you and you loved her. And I don't remember God calling me to that, but I just felt like, you know, she was such a blessing to me, and I know I was a blessing to her. And after she passed away, I just thank God so much for her. So that's just my story.
Very good. Marlene.
I was 14, and I don't, as I remember it, I never thought of it as a call. I think at 14, you're too wrapped up in teenage things. But anyway, the church came to me, actually to my parents, because I was only 14, and asked if, because I played the piano for a lot of different places and organizations and at the school and that, and asked if I would consider becoming the church organist. I had never touched an organ. I didn't know what they were. But anyway, my teacher came in. I started as an organist at 15 and played until I was 75. That was the last time I played. I played at so many different churches in so many different cities and different states. And looking back, I realize now what a blessing it was for me all those years. At the time, as I said, and I blame it on my youth, and that's probably not a good excuse. I wasn't as connected to the Lord as I should be, but I guess I have to say it was a mission I was given, and I accepted when I didn't know any better.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a
These are
brief one.
great. Yeah, Betty.
Back in Tacoma, I started a group on card making. And we had 20 women show up. So it was a good group. And during that time, I wondered, why am I doing this? Why am I just enjoying it so much? Why? And when I came down here, I found out why. The Lord had prepared this a long time ago, because it was so easy meeting all of you. You are the friendliest bunch I have ever seen at church. But then Pastor and Vicar Cheryl, at that time, Pastor Cheryl, said, we have created a card ministry because we think they are beautiful. And I thought, oh Lord, thank you, thank you. And every time, now I have two of the best friends I have ever had in Jane and Deborah. They are wonderful to work with, and they're such good people. So exciting. And so now I know why God prepared that for me and prepared me for that. And what a blessing it has been. Also, I want to take a minute and thank you very much, ladies, for your donation. It just comes in and goes out, and it brings me beautiful paper and other things that we need. So I thank you so much. I thank the Lord.
Thank
Well,
you very
You
much.
started a
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful ministry, and we thank
Yeah.
you, Betty.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Janet.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Betty, for the card ministry. It really helped me a lot this last month with my mother dying. But I guess the same thing inspired me to start the prayer shawl ministry, which seemed to run its course at Rejoice. And now I'm doing it over at Central Lutheran. So it does continue.
Super.
Mhm.
Super.
Mhm.
Glad to hear it.
Great.
Laura.
Janet, I just want to say, I told my sister about the prayer shawl ministry at Rejoice because she had a very thin scarf. Their AC is set so high in their church because the albs that the clergy and all the assisting the acolytes and they're so heavy that they have to keep the AC cranked up. And I said, we have this wonderful prayer shawl ministry where if somebody needs to, have a shawl around them, if the AC is too high for them, then they can just take one and they can either keep it or they can put it back for someone else to use the next Sunday. So thank you, Janet, for doing that. That's a wonderful ministry that you've started.
I agree. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, I know it's a little early, but I think unless anybody, okay, Marlene, yes.
I'm trying to remember at night. It's on a piece of paper in my kitchen for me to see every day. And I think it's something that perfectly explains what we've been talking about here. And it says, and I don't know who wrote it. I wasn't smart enough to write it down. It says, Jesus did not come to us to take us out of the troubles and turmoils of this world, but rather to walk with us as we live life. And I think that's exactly what we've been talking about.
Could you share that on the internet to some of us?
I'm sorry?
Could you take a picture and share that on the internet to some of us?
I would like you to do it again. I'd like you to tell us again.
Jesus did not come to take us out of the troubles and turmoils of this world. He came to walk beside us as we live life.
Love it. And I have to say, what better way to end this session is with those words.
Yes.
So, we're going to assume that's our prayer for the day, to thank the Lord that he does walk with us. We will see you all next week, and hopefully everybody's internet will work.
Y'all stay cool.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.